to the Metro desk, and
Wow.
like, but again, it was having to start over. Right, I was older than most of the other reporters. I had never done this really at that level before, so it was another moment of just like, do not fail, do not fail. You must do well at this, or you'll have to leave the Times.
Oh wow!
So.
But you seem to be very good at just like, let's just, all the obstacles are there. I'm not supposed to do this at this time of my life, but you know what? Let's just do it and see what happens.
Yeah.
So at least there is that seed in you that is like, you know what? I need to break out of this thing, and you have the courage and just the blind kind of vision to get there.
Stubbornness.
Stubbornness.
Well, I will say this. I do think part of that is having grown up with a father who felt unrealized, and I feel like that was part of his drinking problem. Was that he was just full of this sense that he hadn't done what he was supposed to do, and I was like,
God,
I don't want to be that. I don't want to be a bitter, angry person for the rest of my life.
That is very heavy. I mean, I understand that feeling. As you get older, it creeps in, and then also with the legacy of this kind of intergenerational stories building up. I mean, even I can definitely relate to that, but I also can see why there might have been this kind of sense of tough love. Also, it is that fear of their own failure that they're also putting on you, and they also want you to thrive and be safe and all of it.
It's a lot.
And how do you begin to break that down and digest it, and then process and grow and do what you need to do as your own soul in this earth?
What do you think they would think of like your surfing in pursuit of it?
What a waste of time.
No, I mean, like, it's especially you've got this incredible book that came out of it, and this wonderful life that you've created. Like, I imagine there must be something there.
Yeah, well, I think that both of my parents would be proud of me for having written the book. They would, and I'm sort of sad that they didn't get to see that. But I think my father would just be like, why, right? Would just be sort of mystified by it. My mother, I think, would think it's cool.
Yeah.
Like, she would worry about my safety, but I think...
What mother doesn't.
Right, but I think she would think it's cool because she wasn't super athletic, but she was just very kind of a person who like went out in the world and did things, right? Always wanted to go out in the world and do things. And so I think that she would be proud of that. But, I think of my father from time to time because he always used to say that a good pool player is the sign of a misspent youth. And I think he probably would think the same thing about surfing. Like the good surfers, just they misspent their youth.
Well, to be honest, like my brother and I always talk about this. Like, if you're like a really good surfer and you, if you're a really good surfer but you're not like professional, you've probably spent way too much time surfing. Maybe, I've always felt like, yeah, he's really good. Man, he probably wasting so much time surfing should have been spent doing other things too,
See,
no, that's just my insecurity when I see a really good surfer sometimes, it's more just a way of putting them down to make myself feel better.
Exactly.
Got it. Gotcha.
Well, you grew up in New York and you're from New York. How did surfing then kind of change your relationship to the landscape of the city?
Well, it's funny. I was actually I was thinking about that a little bit on my way here today. I mean, one of the things that Rockaway has done is just opened me up to just yet another way that you can live in New York. Right? That's the thing about this city that I think is endlessly amazing. Right? There's so many different ways to live. But it has also turned me into way less of an urban person. Right? Like, I get on the subway and I come out in Midtown Manhattan.
Thanks for coming, by the way.
Yes.
Thanks for coming to the
Trip,
studio.
Absolutely. But it's like, I feel like I don't know how to act. Right?
Well, you start to feel like a fish out of water.
Yes, absolutely.
In the city in some way. Or, I don't know about you, but I used to always feel this too, like, and sometimes I feel this, is special because I surf. It gives you... And this is something I want to talk about. It's like how surfing has given you an identity. It gives you something to identify with, a community, to belong to a tribe. It really gives you a way to stand out in the city when everyone else is maybe watching a baseball game or doing something else. I kind of, in my head, I'm always like, yeah, but they don't know what it's like to ride a wave or something. And you feel like a little different.
Yes. Surfing definitely has made me feel just cooler in some way. And it also just, gives me such a reset, right? Like going into the water, catching a wave, even if I don't ride it very well, there's just something that's very grounding about that. But yeah, sort of being part of this tribe that is still a little bit mysterious, I think, right? And has this kind of allure. And so many strangers on the street in Rockaway will say, older women especially, it's like, oh my God, you surf. I would be so terrified, or like applaud when I come out if I've ridden away. So it is really, I think it does have this kind of mystique about it. And it has codes and all sorts of weird science and and you have to learn
mysticism.
And you have to learn a lot of that and then explore. So yeah, definitely it's given me a different sense of myself.
What I wanted to ask you this. Can you define what a surfer is? Because this is something you talk about in the book. Your friends like, oh well, you don't want to be one of those cultural surfers, Right. And so I started thinking, like, what would you consider a surfer now?
I don't know. I guess someone who surfs consistently, right? Someone who actually prioritizes surfing, not over lots of other things. And it's not even about the volume, right? But it's about the commitment and actually participating in the practice, right? Like I think it's a New Yorker cartoon that has a guy going into a surf shop, and he's like, what would be a good board for someone who talks about surfing all the time but only goes once or twice a year, right?
Yep.
I've not seen that. That is hilarious.
That's great.
That is great. That is so funny.
So that's, and I mean, I get that there are a lot of people who love the lifestyle, actually have enjoyed surfing a couple times, but have whatever obligations that they are putting ahead of actually surfing. And so I don't think those people are really surfers. Right. I think they're dabblers.
Yeah, there's a reorientation that happens when you are a surfer. Everything becomes, your entire life is reoriented, where it's now about prioritizing that, and everything else kind of like has this loose kind of, it's the loosest kind of schedule, because you're always like have a bookmark in there, like, we have plans, but let's check back that morning and see, because you have to make sure you're like, I see a swell and I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be available that day. And so it's always that kind of, priority.
Yeah. Yep.
What about the anxiety of being a surfer?
Well, there's that too.
It's particularly here in the East Coast. It's like
binge or starve,
feast or famine, and it's also like you're supposed to do something in the city, and you're supposed to go into work, but the waves all of a sudden have turned on, and
it's the worst.
You look on Surfline Cam or something, and you're just like, oh, fuck. And it's a real. Yeah. We're reading Thad Zukowski's book right now, and The Drop, and this whole addiction, aspect to it as well. Yep. And it's funny, like how you started out kind of really liking it and enjoying it, but also didn't do it as all the time until like your friend challenged you to surf every day for a month.
Your accountability friend, that was great.
Your pusher.
Yep, my pusher, and that actually was a life-changing moment, because I was very frustrated with myself and my quote-unquote progress. Yeah. And so thinking about, okay, I'm going to surf every day, and the only times that I did not was when like there was lightning, or if I thought that it's just too big and messy and I really will get swept out to sea. But
slacker.
Damn, Karen.
But it was just that little shift of it's not about checking the ways to see if you're going to go. It's about figuring out your day. So when are you going to go? Like looking at your schedule and what really needs to be done and what can be pushed, and when are you going to surf today? And that mindset. It's funny. I actually felt like I had lost that mindset for a while because when I was writing the book, because it's like. A lot of writing the book was fun. A lot of writing the book was not so fun and kind of painful, with dark nights of the soul, trying to remember things.
Yeah.
Or whatever,
oh, God.
right? And so I wasn't surfing very much. And I felt like a fraud. I was just like, how can you write a book about surfing and not be surfing all the time? So,
well, ask Matt Warshaw. I mean, he doesn't surf, and he's the encyclopedia of surfing.
I know.
I do, but I think, look, like. I don't think you have to surf every day either.
No,
I think it's also like a mindset and it's how you approach life.
Right.
You can still be a surfer. And, this goes against Kelly Slater once said this in Surfers, the movie. He's like, you could be a surfer, but if you don't surf every day, you're not really a surfer, which I disagree with.
I disagree with that too.
But I think it's about your mindset towards life and your approach towards life. And you can surf life in some ways. And you may not surf every day, but you're still thinking about it. You're still tracking it. And you're still kind of committed emotionally to it as well.
Right.
Totally.
Right. Fair.
Watching surf films when the
flat, reading magazines,
anything. You're just like anything surf.
Had you ever read the book Caught Inside by
Yes.
Diane?
Yes, I have.
I felt your book was like the inverse of that in some
interesting.
way, or the East Coast version some way. I love it's like one of my favorite books, and listening to your book for me felt like I was like, oh my God, this is kind of this really cool inversion of that book, and this and it's beautifully done, and I just really enjoyed it because it was a different perspective on learning to surf from his experience too.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I had actually thought that I was also, it was kind of going to be the inverse of Barbarian Days.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was gonna mention that.
And what both of those books have in common is that those guys can surf, right? Like,
well, Dan Duane couldn't though.
not at the beginning.
Not at the beginning.
Not at
right.
the beginning.
Yeah.
But he doesn't seem to struggle with it in the way that I struggled with it.
No, they just didn't write about it as much.
It's possible. But I felt when I pitched this book, I felt like, I thought it was important to show that you can be in love with something and not really be very good at it, still love it, still get a lot out of it, even though your performance, quote unquote, isn't so great. Right. And it can actually become an organizing principle for your life, and it can bring you all sorts of joy that you would never have known that you could have without it. Because it's like our culture is so, like, achievement oriented, right? It's like if you're not good at it, don't do it.
Right.
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 And if you are good at it, make it into a side hustle.
Right.
Well, that's like how but that's like a lot of sports in general in our culture. There are these games where you have to perform, and you can't just do it and enjoy it for what it is.
Right.
You have to compete, or you have to measure up against someone else.
Right.
And that's the beauty of surfing, and I think even more so in today, it's less performance oriented and more about the experience as well.
Right. Well, I think one of the things that we're seeing, part of this is technology, that like you can now have a career as a surfer and not necessarily be on the tour.
Right? Yeah.
Right? Like you can just make your beautiful Instagram videos and I'm sure that there are downsides, problems, whatever with that, but I think that's a nice thing, right? I think all these competitive surfers, right? Carissa Moore, she's, awesome, right? And I admire what they can all do, but that is not that is just not for me, and that's not for everybody.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. There's so many inspirational stories out there, and I think also kind of like the Instagram platform, the democratization of the representation of surf has been so amazing, and people, all kinds of people draw so much inspiration from that. Not even surfers, you know, just to see like, as women, oh, you're from here, oh, you're this age, or whatever it is, and you can somehow access that, and you look beautiful. It doesn't matter. They don't